recorded. Oh, it's almost almost like magic. So this session will be recorded, and the recording and all of the slides will be available on the One website over the next couple of days. Because the content will change over time, they'll be live for about 3 months. So encourage you to come back, have a look, share it with some of your colleagues, and yeah, use it as you need to. So without further ado, I am going to kick off today's session. I'm going to hand over in a second to Nadine Reynolds, who's joining us today from Better with Money. Nadine's a financial wellbeing consultant, and she'll introduce herself. But this is the second session that One have run with Better with Money, and it's something that we feel really strongly about at One around supporting women with their well-being, and finance and pensions and investment all comes under that umbrella. So this is one of a number of sessions we will hold around the topic of money. I'm Karen Anderson. I'm the Executive Director at the Women's Utilities Network. For those of you who are joining us today that are not familiar with One or haven't come to any of our events previously, just encourage you all to have a look on our website. There's lots of information there on how you can join our network, get involved. There's lots of resources from previous sessions we've had, so I'll pop the link in the chat there. So please do have a look, and if you haven't joined yet, please sign up as a member. Perhaps follow us on LinkedIn, and if you are already a member, then please do encourage your colleagues to get involved as well. So I'm going to hand over to Nadine. Please, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat, and then we'll probably come to them all at the end, because there'll be lots of content. So hopefully your questions will be answered as we go through. But yeah, enjoy the session, and thank you very much. I will hand you over to Nadine.
Oh, amazing. Thank you, Karen. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on behalf of One, where we'll be aiming to give you some practical tips and guidance on pensions with an additional focus for those specific considerations that we have to make as women. So this session, as Karen said, is being recorded and the slides will be available post-event. So if you can't hang on we're going to be on for about an hour. If you can't hang on for the hour, absolutely fine. We won't be offended if you drop off. You can catch up with the content at a later date. And please signpost it also to your friends, family, colleagues, because there might be information here that might not be applicable to yourself, but might be applicable to those around you as well. So let's share the content, let's share the information, so we're all in the best place possible to handle this aspect of our finances. So a little introduction of myself. I know Cameron just introduced me, but I'm Nadine Reynolds and I'm a financial wellbeing consultant at Better with Money. So Better with Money is an independent financial education company that provides webinars in the workplace to help bring money matters to life and hopefully reduce some of the stress that can come with managing money. A little bit of housekeeping before we do start. So this webinar is information only. It is not financial advice. I am not a pension advisor. I'm not a financial advisor. What we're aiming to do is give you the tools and knowledge to make your own decisions about your finances. Now, Better with Money is not connected to any of the companies or websites that I might mention or signpost today, and we've got no products to sell. So if I do mention companies or websites along the way, it's because we genuinely believe they offer good services which you can take advantage of, and not because we have any financial incentive to do so. Please ask any questions as we go throughout the webinar by popping them in the chat or the Q&A, and those are being manned by Karen. So we will get to those questions, but we will carve out time at the end to do that. So just a reminder, I'm not able to give financial advice during this session. Again, going to be on for about an hour. The session is being recorded and the slides will be available post-event. So what we're going to be looking at today, so whether you're just starting to think about your retirement or you're already contributing to a pension scheme, understanding how pensions work is crucial for securing your financial future. And my aim today is to help break down some of the often complex jargon and that world of pensions and provide the knowledge to help you make informed decisions about your retirement savings. Now, I do encourage you to engage throughout the session, ask those questions, share your experiences, because this is your opportunity to gain clarity and confidence around pensions, as well as the steps that we can take towards a more equal retirement landscape. So in this webinar, we're going to cover why we need a pension. We're going to look at where that income might come from, We're going to look at those state pension basics, just break that down a little bit. How much may I need in retirement? That's the big question we always get asked. We'll have a look at that gender pension gap and why that is happening, and what aspects you might be able to do to negate that. And then we'll look at finding all pensions and transferring all pensions as well. And then we've got that Q&A at the end. Okay, so I think it's first makes sense to consider what a pension actually is. Quite simply, pensions provide income in later life, usually at the point in time when you want to reduce your working hours or stop altogether. And there are several different types of pension which work in different ways, and we're going to cover some of these in a few slides' time. But before that, let's think about why we even need a pension. So one of the key reasons is that we're living longer. So thanks to advancements in healthcare, people are now living well into their 80s and 90s. And whilst this is fantastic news, it means that we need to support ourselves financially for a longer period after we retire. And it isn't unrealistic to say that you could spend around a third of your life in retirement. So for example, if you retired at 65 and lived till 90, that's 25 years of expenses to cover. And those expenses include both essential costs and costs like bills and food. But we also need enough money to fund our desired lifestyle once we stop working too. Now, with the full new state pension currently at over 12,500 a year, you'll need to consider how far this will go and how you fund any additional spending you expect or intend to make each year. And in reality, the state pension is unlikely to cover much more than your very basic expenditure. So having separate pension savings can give us more choice and flexibility later in life, so that we're not relying on that state pension alone to deliver the lifestyle we want. And one of the reasons it is prudent not to rely on the state alone is that by 2050, it is predicted that 1 in 4 people are going to be over 65. And bearing in mind the government are dependent on people working and paying national insurance to fund those who are drawing state pensions now, the older our population gets, the more strain it will put on the UK pension system, especially as we're living longer too. And I think it's important to remind everyone at this stage that we have recently, we've seen changes in government. We had a change in government not long ago, and there's going to be changes in leaders. And whilst there is currently no clarity around any major changes being made to the amount of state pension that will be paid, it is important to keep an eye on this and understand the state pension is influenced by the government and broader economics. And really, because none of us have a crystal ball to predict what might happen to the state pension, it's far better to take control of your own retirement savings to ensure we have enough for the future, independently of what any government might do in the future. But right now, if you are interested in learning more about life expectancy, it's not something I've done, and this is based on your age. There's actual link to a BBC website that has a calculator you can complete if you so wish to have a little look at that. And I put a QR code on there as well. So I just want to acknowledge that it isn't just pensions that people use to fund their retirement. In the UK, most people rely on a combination of different income sources to ensure they can maintain their lifestyle after they stop working. So let's look at some of the main categories of retirement which you may come across, and we're going to leave state pension and workplace pensions out for now because I'm going to cover those. So let's just have a look at savings, because most people may accumulate savings investments outside of pensions in savings accounts, ISAs or investments. Whilst these may not be designed specifically for retirement, they can provide an additional income stream to support your lifestyle. The amount of interest you earn on your savings will depend on, say, interest rates, which do change over time. And if you have stock market investments, the income from these may change depending on the types of investments you choose and how well they perform. It is important to consider how and when you will draw on these savings, but they can really help bridge gaps to cover unexpected expenses in retirement. Next one is work income, because more people are choosing to work part-time or set up their own small businesses later in life, so they continue to earn income. There's a book called The 100-Year Life, which suggests that we are starting to move away from the conventional education, career, retirement model. And many of us will take more career breaks as we go, but continue to work into our 80s. So that is on Amazon, and it's written by Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott, if you fancy reading it. It's called The 100-Year Life. Next one is property income. So that might also play a role. So for those who own property, you may plan to sell your home or buy a cheaper one in order to release some equity. And this can provide extra income or perhaps help pay for care later in life. If you do decide to sell your own home and downsize, you should take into account any costs involved. This can significantly reduce the amount of cash you raise from a sale. Alternatively, you may have rental income, or you might have a property that you rent out, and that provides you with a regular income. In this case, you should consider the tax implications of any rental income you do receive. And in a similar way, if you're considering selling a second property or that rental property, basically any other property than your main residence, you should consider that you may have to pay capital gains tax on any increase in value you do make, as all these things can impact the amount of money a property gives you towards your retirement. Now, I just want to touch on benefits because depending on your income and how much capital you have, you may also be entitled to means tested benefits such as cold weather payments, council tax support, housing benefit, income support, pension credits, and universal credits. If this is the case, it is worth doing a full assessment via websites such as Money Helper and Entitled to get a full picture of what you might be able to claim. And finally, inheritance. Some people may receive inheritance, which provides a lump sum that can contribute towards retirement. Although this is a less predictable source of income and arguably more difficult to plan in advance, ultimately, it is important to seriously think about all the sources of income you may have in later life and understand whether this is going to provide enough income at that point. It may help to think of it like a pay slip like you get now. What income are you going to have to give you that take home figure at the bottom right hand corner? In reality, the answer to this question is probably going to be different for everyone. So today we're going to focus on the pension elements, both the new state pension and what you may get from your workplace pensions too. So let's start by looking at the state pension. Now, for many, this is going to represent a very important building block in retirement provisions, essentially the foundation of retirement income. Now, over the years, the rules of the state pension have changed, and the last big overhaul of the state pension happened in 2016, when the government replaced the basic state pension with the new state pension, with the aim of making it simpler to understand and fairer for all. So anyone who reaches state pension age on or after the 6th of April 2016, which maybe quite a few of us on this webinar, will all be entitled to the new state pension. And this is the one I'm going to be referring to today. So the full new state pension, if you're retiring this tax year, is £241.30 per week or £12,548 a year. And in order to get the full amount, you need to have built up 35 qualifying years of your national insurance record. So how do you build up a qualifying year? Well, you can do it in a few years. Your first is to earn at least 12,570 a year. The second is if you have partners or family who are self-employed, they can earn a qualifying year towards a new state pension, or yourself if you're self-employed now. And if they have profits over £7,105 an annum. These are and are paying those national insurance contributions. However, if you do have tax years where you don't earn enough, for example, you work part-time or have a career break, then the third point is key. You could be given a national insurance credit to give you a qualifying year by claiming certain state benefits such as child benefit or receiving state benefits such as universal credit, job seekers allowance, employment support allowance, or working tax credits. If you receive any of these benefits, you'll automatically be credited with a qualifying years towards the new state pension. Now, for women, a particular important point is to claim for child benefit, even if you choose not to receive the payment due to that high income child benefit charge, if you fall with that band, because just claiming can protect your future state pension. You do need at least 10 qualifying years to get anything from the new state pension, but these don't need to be 10 continuous years, just 10 years over your working lifetime. And you do need to have that 35 years to get the full 12,548 in today's term, the full new state pension. In some cases, you can actually have a higher state pension. And this is because in 2016, the government compared the state pension you built up under the old state pension rules compared with that of what you would have built up under the new state pension. And the higher of the two was used in your new state pension starting amount. So when you do get to state pension age, it's important to note that you do not get the state pension automatically, but rather you do have to actively claim it. You should receive a letter at least 8 weeks before you reach state pension age and telling you how to do that. And the easiest way nowadays is online at the gov.uk website. Once you've done that, your state pension should start within 5 weeks of your state pension age and it will be paid every 4 weeks in arrears after that. Which brings us on to the next slide and the question, when do you get your state pension? Well, the simple answer is your state pension age. But when is that? It all depends on when you were born. And I've tried to simplify it as much as I can. So if you were born after the 6th of April 1978, your state pension age is usually 68. And although nothing has been set in stone, there is talk of it moving to 69. If you were born between the 6th of April 1961 and the 6th of April 1978, your state pension age is currently 67. However, again, there are plans to increase state pension age for those born between 1970 and 1978 to be somewhere between 67 and 68, depending on when your birthday lands. But this is still being worked through Parliament, and we've obviously had a change of government since then. So just keep an eye on that. Now, there's always going to be exceptions to the rules. So if you were a woman born before 1960, your state pension age can be anywhere between 60 and 65. And that was the point when they were trying to equalise the ages for men and women, as there used to be a differential between the two. Now, rather than, putting up a long-winded table for all the variations, the easiest way to check your state pension age is to use the state pension age checker tool on gov.uk, and it's on the slide. Also tells you when you'll be eligible for your free bus pass as well in your area. So it does vary in the different areas where you live. And it's worth noting again, state pension age could change in the future as people are living longer and are spending more time in retirement. So the state pensions are costing the government more than they did when it was actually first introduced. However, the government would need to agree and pass a new law before changing state pension ages again. But please watch out, particularly if you're born between 1970 and 1978, because that's the first category they're looking to shift. Right, so let's just go on to how much state pension you will get. So the Department of Work and Pensions predicts that between 85% and 90% of people reaching state pension age will receive the full new state pension amount. But rather than leave it to guesswork, you can go online and request a state pension forecast using the link shown here on the gov.uk website. This will tell you your state pension age, how much you're likely to get based on your contribution record, and you'll also be able to see your national insurance contribution history. You're required to have an HMRC login to do this, but it's really easy to sign up. As part of the national insurance record history, it may be worth knowing a little bit about contracted out, if you might have heard of that, which might apply to some people if you contracted out at any point. And what we mean by that is historically it was really attractive to have part of your national insurance contracted out from the state's second pension paid into your own private pension. Now, this was particular in the 80s and 90s, and there was a really big push for people to do that. It might not apply to anyone on this call, but you might have heard of it. My aunt, she's got contracted out within her pension. So it meant that you got an element of contracted out monies that has been sitting in your private scheme. So there's no such thing as that anymore because everyone got enrolled back into the state pension, which means our national insurance is just being paid across in the normal fashion. But for people who may have done this historically, you might see qualifying years being lower than expected when you come to check it. Now, easiest way to do this, like I said, is online, but you could also sign up for your HMR Gateway account, download the HMRC app, and you'll be able to see when your state pension age is. I looked at mine the other day, mine's 2048, so got a way to go yet, but not longer. It's a bit gutting, but it's showing that I'm on track for full 35 years and I should be on track for my full state pension. So you should be able to see that. Now, if you don't want to do that, you can fill a form in, a BR19, and that's found on the gov.uk website. You can print it out and post it back to the pension centre, but it can take up to 6 weeks, so you can't fill that out if you're within a month of state pension age. The other option is to phone the phone lines at the Future Pension Centre on the numbers shown on the slide. So a few options there for you, but the quickest way is download that HMRC app, get it on your phone. Everyone should have that as standard on the phone. It's like internet banking, but for your tax accounts. There's so much information on there. So if there's one thing you take away from today, hope there's a few things, go and download the HMRC app and have it on your phone. Right then, so we know about state pensions now when we've done a round robin of that, and the fact that this tax year, someone who's paid in the full 35 years of national insurance will receive just over 12,500. And we've already said that this represents a really important building block in our retirement provision. But the next question people often ask is, how much income will I need in retirement? Now, the first thing I'd like to say on this is that the answer to this question will be different for everyone, which makes it quite difficult to answer. And in fact, research from Pensions and Lifetime Savings Associated suggests that 77% of savers don't know how to answer this question. And they don't know how much they'll actually need in retirement. And as few as 16% of savers can actually give a figure. So you're certainly not alone if you're not sure how much you might need. But a sensible place to start when deciding how much to pay into things like pensions is to consider what sort of lifestyle you want in retirement. And to help with this, the PLSA have devised a tool known as the Retirement Living Standards. And it's a framework to help people in the UK understand how much money they'll need for retirement. These standards are designed based on a basket of goods and services, and they do make various assumptions. But the idea here is to give an individual an idea of how much you would need in retirement to provide a minimum, a moderate, and a comfortable retirement, which you can see on the slide. And note the figures are net figures, so that's shown after tax, and they were last updated in June of this year, so they're really recent. But always check the website because they're updating them on a regular basis, but I updated them for this webinar in June. So at the minimum level, retirees can cover the basic needs, such as food, housing and utilities, with a small allowance for social activities. This level supports essential living, but with limited flexibility for extras like holidays or home improvements. Moderate level provides more financial flexibility, allowing for a broader range of activities like short holidays in Europe, eating out, occasional leisure spending. And this level arguably supports a more balanced retirement lifestyle, including some discretionary spending. Now, at the comfortable level, retirees can enjoy longer holidays, regular dining out, a newer car, and more substantial home improvements in providing more financial security and freedom in retirement. Now, most government data shows that the average weekly income for pensioners for the financial year was around £387 after tax, and then housing costs and after tax and housing costs, which is just over £20,000 a year. So that puts the average firmly in the minimum retirement income as per the retirement living standards. Now, you may be aiming for a lot higher than that, but part of your thinking should consider how much you earn now, what costs may disappear when you retire, such as mortgage and maybe travel costs, and then get a rough idea as to what you're aiming for. And remember, the state pension is a good foundation for that income at 12,548 a year. But if we took the state pension in isolation, we're only going to live off that. That doesn't even meet what the retirement living standards are saying is a minimum standard of living. And if we did have examples in the UK of someone living on the state pension alone, then they are deemed to be living under the poverty lines now. So I do guess, the message here is that the state pension is not designed to provide us with even what we see here as a minimum standard of living. It is purely there to act in complement to everything else that we are planning on saving or investing into, then top up that starting block in the form of the state pension. And that might come as quite a surprise to some of you, because I know when I do one-to-one work with people, they often do see the state pension as the answer to their retirement plans. And it can be quite a shock when they realise that that's maybe only a small part of the actually wider commitment financially that's needed to even have a relatively normal standard of living. So something to be really mindful of here. Now, a really rough rule of thumb that I want you to consider, say you wanted to have £10,000 of income in retirement, then your pension pot that you're saving towards would need to be about 20 times that figure as a value. So you would need a pension pot value of about £200,000 to even kick back at a £10,000 a year income. So it's a very rough rule of thumb that, but it's just to get you understanding how much you need in your pension pots and your retirement funds to give you a kickback. So that is something to have in mind when you're wondering how big your pension pot needs to be. The rough rule of thumb is that 200,000 pounds a year pension pot is going to bring you an income of about £10,000 a year. Now, on this slide, and you can get this information if you go on the Retirement Living Standards website, it's just further detail about exactly what each of the different standards of living include. So to just pick out a few of the key facts, minimum standard of living, so you need 13,900 a year for a single person, and then 22,500 a year for a couple. So, that'll allow you to spend between 50 and £95 a week if you're single to a couple. You have no car and spend a week away in the UK every year. Spend about £20 a year on birthday presents. Look at moderate, grocery costs are a little higher, and there's provision for more spend on eating outside the home. You may have a small car and spend a week in Europe on holiday. And then comfortable living standard allows you more to be spent on keeping your property in order, home improvements. You have access to a newer car, can go on 4-star holidays for a fortnight, some weekend breaks, and there's more to spend on clothing and presents for others too. So I definitely suggest spending some time looking at this if you are thinking about your retirement lifestyle and what that might look like, because it's a really useful starting point. So go on that website, Retirement Living Standards, and have a read of that. Okay, so now we've established that the state pension is unlikely to be enough to live on in retirement in isolation. Now let's move on to talking about workplace pensions as a great way to plug this income gap. So if we think again about what a pension is, it's a tax efficient way of investing for later life, and it provides you with an income when you retire. And I think it's actually important to just highlight that word investing, because you may not actually realise that if you do have a pension, you're in fact an investor, because your money will probably not just be sat in cash within your pension, but rather be invested into other assets with that aim to give you that growth over that longer term. Pensions have been designed to incentivise us to save for retirement. So last year, 4 out of 5 employees in the UK, so that's around 22.3 million, were participating in workplace pensions, and the total annual workplace savings, eligible savers, was around 131 billion. Now, the most common type of workplace pension is a defined contribution. So I just want to talk a little bit about those features of a defined contribution pension. So again, most tax efficient way of saving that we've got access to. So if you pay tax, you receive full tax relief at your highest rate on any contribution you pay in. And that means you don't pay any tax on the money that you put into your pension up to the lower of £60,000 or your gross annual salary. Once the money is in the pot, your investments will grow free of income tax and capital gains tax. And another tax benefit of pensions is that if you decide to draw on that money later in life, you can take up to 25% of that savings pot up to around 268,000, which is known as a lump sum allowance. But you do need to remember that with a pension, these are intended to be a long investment vehicle, and you can't access your pension until 55, and it is rising to 57 in 2028. So any money, oh, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, it keeps coming and going. Sorry, everyone. It just came on me then. So any money that you do put into your pensions, you must really be able to do without the money until that point in the future. And if we think about the income you will get from your pension at that point, there are currently various ways to be able to access this, making DC pensions quite flexible in that sense. So, there may be an inheritance tax advantage of putting money into pensions. You do need to check with the individual pension fund and make sure that your nomination of beneficiaries are up to date in any pension schemes, and not just pension schemes. I just want to highlight any insurance schemes, any workplace or external insurance schemes or external pensions or workplace pension. Nominate your beneficiary. So this is who the policy would go to if anything happened to you. And this is separate to your will, but just make sure that's in line with your will as well, that they all match up. So bit of admin task for you. Go away, make sure your nomination of beneficiaries up to date, because I've heard horror stories of ex-husbands and ex-wives and ex-partners and people who are no longer with us still being beneficiaries on those accounts. So really important to get that up to date. Right then, so we've seen that pensions can help boost your retirement income over and above the state pension, and they come with various tax benefits and features. So you may want to pay more if you can afford to do so. But the other reason you might want to pay more into your pension is for tax planning. For example, to keep your salary below certain thresholds. And there are examples of this on that slide. So it might prevent you from going into higher tax rate bands or losing child benefit or personal allowance entitlements. So with child benefit, for example, you could pay a contribution into a pension to ensure you keep below that child benefit tax charge level. So say you were earning at 63,000, it might be worth sacrificing 3,000 as it will take your salary for tax purposes to 60,000 so you continue to be eligible for the full child benefit. You may put more into your pension by increasing your contributions each month or adding additional voluntary contributions when you feel able to. And just to put a few figures on this, if you put additional £5,000 contribution in your pension, say at age, you do put a one-off lump sum at age 35, that could be worth over 25,000 at state pension age of 68, assuming there was a 5% growth rate on that, which is very achievable in a pension, and that's some very nice holidays that you could enjoy in the future, and it could push you from, minimum into moderate or moderate into comfortable just by putting a one-off amount in early on in your pension investing. So, retirement for many is a number of years away, and it can be difficult to think that far ahead. But when it comes to saving for the future, the earlier you start, the better. And it's particularly true due to a concept called compound interest or compound growth, which is a concept that actually Albert Einstein described as the eighth wonder of the world. But what is it? So compound growth is basically where you achieve growth on growth, and the longer you remain invested, the more likely compound growth is to happen. And as we mentioned earlier, that one of the causes, and I'm going to speak about, in the next slide, is one of the causes of the gender pension gap is pension contributions made during a women's life, is the fact that pensions do not benefit as much from compound growth if the contributions are low. And like I said, we're going to talk about that in the next slide. But if we look at this one, we have a numerical example of this. So we've got Erica and Craig. So Erica starts saving into her pension from age 25 at £100 a month, and she does that for 40 years. Now, assuming her fund grows by 5% a year on average, which is quite realistic in a pension savings, her contribution of 48,000 would grow by 105,000, and she would have just over 153,000 at age 65, getting all my numbers mixed up there. By contrast, Craig starts paying into his pension at age 45, so he starts a lot later, but he pays £200 a month in for 20 years. But although he's paid the same amount in as Erica, the same 48,000, only has time to grow by £34,000, and his total fund will only be worth 82 and a half, just over 82 and a half at age 65. So that's half of what Erica's is worth. So you can see the earlier you start, the better paying into your pension, because the more you'll benefit from that compound growth on that money, and therefore the less you'll have to contribute to get the same fund as if you started a few years later on, because effectively your money is working for you. But I also want to make the point that it's never too late to start, because even by investing a little and often from today means you'll still benefit from compounding effect. So please don't think you've missed the boat if you've not started contributing yet. And if you do want to play around with some figures and see the effect of paying more into your pension, you can access the Money Helpers calculator tool, which you can access through the Better With Money website, or go straight to Money Helper. And it's a Money Helper pension income, and it factors in the state pension and any other pensions you built up. So it'll give you a rough idea as you are on track for. And also, please remember to go on your own pension provider's website as well. They usually have lots of tools and lots of modelers and information to help you work out whether you're on track, what the impacts of paying more into your pension will be. Okay then, so I want to talk about the gender pension gap. So this in the UK refers to the difference in retirement savings and pension income between men and women. And it's driven by factors such as lower average earnings, career breaks for caring responsibilities, part-time work and longer life expectancy. The gender pension gap means that women, upon reaching retirement, often have substantially less saved in their pensions when compared to men. And in fact, according to now, the Pensions Gender Pension Gap reports, women retire with the average pension savings of £69,000 compared to £205,000 for men. So that's just an average. Comparing these two numbers gives a gender pension gap of nearly 34%. And incredibly, to accumulate an equivalent pension, a woman would need to work an additional 19 years in full-time employment. So that's a stark illustration of the scale of the gender pension gap issue. And if we assume that an individual starts paying into the pension from age 22, which is the minimum age for auto enrolment as things stand, this means a girl is already behind in terms of pension savings by the time she's 3. However, women live on average 4 years longer than men, so should theoretically be trying to save more to provide them with the same income in retirement as a man, as the savings would have to stretch further. So how has this discrepancy come about? Firstly, employee contributions tend to be a percentage of salary. So if a woman's salary is lower, so are the pension contributions, resulting in lower pension savings. Now, interestingly, on average, women are contributing a high percentage of their own income into pensions between the ages of 35 and 44. Now, that's 6.1% compared with 5.8. But by middle age, it's men that are paying almost £80 more a month into their pensions than women. And women are far more likely to have periods where they have no contributions at all, with periods of unemployment throughout their career. And career breaks taken by women to care for children, elderly relatives, or manage the effects of menopause also disproportionately affects their pensions. These breaks disrupt both earnings and pension contributions, and the longer the gap persists, the more challenging it becomes to mitigate their impact on pension savings. Now, during an average 10-year career gap, an individual will lose approximately £39,000 in their pension from missing contributions and subsequent investment returns. Also, another contributing factor to the gender pension gap is that as the law stands, people only have to be automatically enrolled into pensions by the employer by at least 22 or earn more than £10,000 a year. A woman working reduced hours is far likely to be under this minimum salary and miss out on pensions contributions altogether. And figures suggest that 35% of women fall under the automatic enrolment salary threshold compared with 11% of men. Now, on this point, it's also worth noting that this earnings trigger is per job held. So if someone has multiple part-time jobs with total earnings above £10,000, they still would not be automatically enrolled into the pension. And if we look at Generation X, so these are females born in, I don't know if it's Generation X actually, I think it might, I can't remember what it's called now. I'm sure that's not X, it might be X. I get confused with these different generations. But those born between the 60s and 70s, they are twice as likely as males to work part-time and be on low incomes and lose out on pension contributions. And again, just to give you an idea of how much you might need to save for retirement, most people live for around 20 years once they reach state pension age. And if you've worked and paid national insurance for 35 years or received state pension benefits, such as child benefits and receive credit, as if you had worked, you will just receive that over that 12,500 per year in today's terms from the new state pension. So if you want a retirement income of around 25,000, you'll need to provide around 12,500 yourself from a workplace or a private pension. The longer you live, the more money you'll need to save. Now, of course, all that income might not come from pensions, as we mentioned earlier. So you might have other property that provides an income through renting or money in ISAs or even some inheritance, but hopefully that helps provide an insight into what you might need to think about. Now, a really important part of being efficient with your pension is understanding the impact of taking time out of your pension. So we're just going to drill down on this a little bit more. Now, the good news is that your employer should automatically keep up your workplace pension contributions whilst you're on parental leave and getting paid. But even so, let's consider the possible impact on your retirement savings if you choose to go back to work full time. You probably won't have any gaps. Can you just pop yourself on mute, please? Sorry for those who've just joined. Thank you. So if you choose to go back to work full time, you probably won't have any gaps in your pension contributions, and you can continue paying in the same as before, and you continue to benefit from your employee contributions. But the downside is that you may have childcare costs that will impact on your budget, and you may be tempted to reduce long-term savings to pay for the costs here and now. Or maybe decide to return to work but go on reduced hours. And in this situation, although you'll continue to get pension contributions, they'll be based on a lower pay. So you will have lower contributions going in and your eventual pension will be less. If you decide to get a different job to fit in with your new family, you may have more flexible working hours, but the pension scheme may not be as favourable. And again, contributions may be lower, and therefore eventual pension could be less. Now, if you choose to give up work altogether, you'll have time at home to enjoy parenthood, but you'll no longer have ongoing savings into your pension unless you choose to make some yourself. So to give you an idea of how these situations may affect your pension savings, let's look at the example of someone who decides to stop contributing into their pension at age 35 as money is tight. If they stop contribution for 1 year, this could affect their pot by age 68 by as much as 12,764. And if they have a 3-year gap in contributions, this could affect their pension pot by over £37,000 by retirement, as you won't benefit from contributions or the investment returns over time, that compound growth. And there is proven, we spoke about the gender pension gap, and it means that women have only a third of pension that a man does on average by the time they reach retirement. So, this is the fact that women tend to have lower salaries on average than men, and they choose to work reduced hours or stop work altogether when they do start a family or take on caring responsibilities. So please do bear in mind, it's not just the here and now of your finances, but also your future finances too. Consider whether you can boost your pension in contributions or support a partner to do the same for theirs to prevent any gaps arising that could impact your retirement provision in the future. Okay, so while structurally policy change is also massive, there are practical tips that every individual woman can take to reduce the gap. So here are some of the most effective strategies. So stay enrolled in that workplace pension where possible. If you're eligible for automatic enrolment, avoid opting out unless absolutely necessary, because even relatively small contributions made consistently over decades can grow and significantly through the investment returns and employer matching contributions. Maximise those employee contributions. Check whether your employer offers matching contributions above the minimum level. If they do, contributing enough to receive the full match is often one of the highest return financial decisions available. Contribute during and after career breaks, so periods spent caring for children or relatives can reduce pension accumulation. If affordable, continue personal pension contributions during these periods, and that can help maintain longer savings. A spouse or a partner may also be able to contribute to a pension on your behalf, subject to UK pension rules. Review your pensions after returning to work. After maternity leave or other career breaks, reassess contribution levels. Increase those contributions later can compensate for the years of lower savings. Consolidate and track pensions, and we're going to talk about those in the next 2 slides. Many people accumulate multiple workplace pensions across different jobs, and keeping track of all pensions makes it easier to understand your retirement position and losing small pots. Check that state pension record. I've already told you, review that national insurance record, go to that gov.uk. And increase contributions after pay rises. Directing part of your salary increase into pension savings can boost retirement income with less impact on day-to-day spending. Invest appropriately for your time horizon. So many years from retirement often benefit from, so people who are many years from retirement often benefit from portfolios with greater exposure to growth. So make sure you know where your pension's invested, regularly review investment allocations. Sometimes it's just put into a default fund, but you might have the opportunity to control those funds yourself if you're savvy enough with investing. Understand the impact of part-time work. So lower earnings mean lower pension contributions. If you work part-time, verify that you meet workplace pension eligibility rules and consider additional pension contributions if feasible. Check financial advice for complex situations. So things like divorce, self-employment, multiple pensions, or approaching retirement can all affect pension planning. Professional advice may help identify tax-efficient or situation-specific options. So the gender pension gap is influenced by wider economic and social factors, including differences in earnings, unpaid caregiving responsibilities, and employment patterns. Measures such as affordable childcare, equal pay initiatives, and pension policies that support carers can also play an important role in reducing that gap at that level. For an individual woman in the UK, maintaining continuous pension savings where possible and taking advantage of employee contributions, checking state pension entitlements, entitlements, and revisiting retirement plans after life events are among the most effective ways to mitigate the impact of gender pension gaps. Okay, then. So, as we come to the end, I just want you to touch on old pension schemes, and in particular, what you can do if you think you have any old pension schemes that you might have lost. So, it's estimated that over 26.6 billion lost pounds are lost in lost pension schemes. Now, could some of that be yours? Now, the most common reason, so they're not lost, nobody's hiding it from you. The most common reason for lost pensions is either the change of employers or individuals forgetting to update the providers of a change of address. Now, only 1 in 5 people remember to do this. Now, if they don't know where to contact you and they don't know where to write to you, how are they going to inform you of your pension scheme? So if you do feel like you've misled or forgotten about or lost touch with old pensions, it's a good starting point to dig out any old annual statements so that you can phone the providers and update your details and then request new annual statements. If you can't find paperwork, then another way of tracking them down is to go through old pay slips or P60s to see what employers you work for, and then contact the old employer themselves and ask for contact details for the pension scheme administrator. Now, failing that, if you have access, you have got access to a free pension tracing service from the government. So I've put the link on the screen. One thing I would say is please don't pay any private companies to trace your pensions for you. You can easily do it through the gov.uk link. You just need to give it the details of who you works for, and they'll give you the pension administrators or phone them directly. Bit of legwork, but don't pay anyone to do this for you. You can do it quite easily yourself. Eventually, we should have access to something called a pension dashboard, which is being developed by the government. So you can see all of your pensions online in one place. But there have been delays to this project, so it could be quite a few years until we're in a position to do this. So we often know that people lose their pension schemes when they change jobs. And on average, people now have about 10 jobs by the time they retire, which could mean 10 pensions with 10 different employers. The key thing to note is if you do change a job is that your previous pensions don't automatically transfer to your new employer's pension when you start a new job. This is a process you have to do yourself. So let's spend just a couple of minutes thinking about why you might want to consider transferring your old pension pots or consolidating. Now, firstly, having all your pensions in one place can help you take control of your money, and it can be easy administratively. Transferring could save you money because all pensions do charge fees to manage your money, but some providers will charge lower fees than others. And the lower the fees, the more of your money remains invested and available for you at retirement. Different pension providers also offer different investment options. So, for example, say you're interested in responsible or sustainable investing, but that's not currently offered by a previous provider, you might want to transfer your pension to a provider that does this. Transferring pension pots between providers can provide access to new and different features. So there might be a better portal, or they have apps, and you got access to different tools like modelers, to have a look at what you might receive if you later in life. Or you might be able to access your pension more easily, like I said, through websites and apps. And this could reduce the likelihood of tiresome paperwork taking time out of your day. Ultimately, having all your pensions in one place can make it easier to see your total. It might lower charges, and it might provide more options. And all of this in turn can make planning for the future easier. And if you think transferring all pension is right for you, you must contact the pension company you are transferring into and out of to check the terms and conditions, and also check about possible charges and whether it's worth paying this to merge pension pots. Because you might just have a small pension pot with a couple of grand in, but they might charge you quite a large fee, and that would wipe out the pension pot, so there's no point. You will need to know which provider the pension is with if you're going to do this, your policy number, and a rough amount saved in that, which you should find on your last pension statement. It is worth being aware that in some cases there may be charges imposed by your old pension for transferring, or you may have guaranteed benefits that you could lose. So please make sure you do your research before you proceed and seek the advice of a regulated financial advisor if you are unsure and you're considering doing this. Okay, so we covered a lot of information in today's session. So the purpose of this slide is just to bring it all together and act as a bit of an action plan for you to work through after the webinar today. One of the steps is understand your state pension entitlement, which knowing your state pension age, your state pension forecast, and remember you can find all this on the gov.uk website or download that HMRC app. The next point urges you to start saving into your workplace pension. As we've seen here, there are various tax advantages associated with this, and we also know that the sooner you start, the better. And I also want to reiterate, it is never too late to get started, so you can still benefit from that compound growth. Next point is about getting online, making use of all the great tools available to you. Make sure you know how to access your individual pensions, your details are updated, how you log in, and take the opportunity to check that everything is correct and up to date. We spoke about tracking down all pensions, and so we got the pension tracing service I've linked on this slide if you're struggling to track them down. So it's a really good time to start considering any other sources of income also, and the part that they may play in helping you achieve your desired lifestyle in retirement. And finally, as we've mentioned, pensions can be complex, so do seek help from a regulated financial advisor if you need to. So just on this slide, just some really good websites, which have been incredibly helpful to myself and many people that I've signposted them to. So you got your money saving expert. So that's that website confronted by Martin Lewis. Loads of information on there about just about everything from what bank you can choose to investments, shopping discounts. There's so much on there, and there's loads of help on there about pensions, about state pensions, workplace pensions, and the best way to go about, engaging with them. Next one is Which. So this is a consumer brand that compares services. It's not just about what's the best washer or hoover. There's loads of articles on there about money as well. So have a look on Which. And then if you want to get into investing or you want to engage better with where your pension invested, so you've got Investopia and Motley Fool. So that's another aspect of building that confidence around money and being able to get that information, get that base knowledge. So then when you are looking at pension statements, you know what you're looking at. So a really good way of building confidence around money is simply talking about it, because the more we talk, the more we open up and share ideas. And awareness is a key part of this, because you are more likely to be happy talking about it if you feel like you know what you're talking about. So once you've done some research, why not think about the people that you feel most comfortable talking to about money, and take some time to share thoughts. And that doesn't mean you have to go in the ins and outs of facts and figures, what you're earning, what you invest, and that sort of thing. It's just about talking about money in general, talking about different products. And if you don't feel comfortable in doing so, you know what I mean, get that base knowledge, because the more we talk about it, the more we feel confident. Few more signposting, just highlighting a few more sources of information where you can go to learn about pensions and more broadly. So again, you've got Which, they've got specific articles on retirement. Age UK, it's not for the elderly. What's the best site to go on? It is aimed to the elderly, but there's loads of pension information on there. So if you want to have a look at that, go on Age UK. Gov.uk, I've mentioned that so many times through today. There's lots of brilliant information on gov.uk. It's black and white, there's no grey areas. And then we've got Money Help and Help with that income calculator if you wish to have a look at that. Right then, we're going to go to questions. And whilst we've got questions up, I'm just going to pop the feedback survey on the screen. So I'm going to pass over to you, Karen. Do you want to field some of the questions over to me while we've got a few minutes left? And like I said, I'm willing to stay on for a little bit longer if we need to get through any questions. If you do need to drop off, please drop off the session. But we're going to go through some of the questions now.
Great, thanks so much, Nadine. That was really useful, and so much information on there. So as I've said at the beginning, and I've popped in the chat, the slides and the recording will be available on our website over the next day or so. So please do go back and have another look and share those with your colleagues. So we've got a few questions in here, but I think you've gone through some of those and some of them we haven't. So let's see how we do for time. We've probably got about 5 minutes or so. So Lauren, I have a lot of pensions across different companies, but don't have visibility on these companies. Is there a service that will find them all for you? So I know you've obviously talked about the gov.uk Find Pension Contact Details website, which I've dropped the link in the chat from the slides as well. But somebody else has also said that website is not helpful if the employer has changed name or is no longer trading, as you need the name of the company to use that website. So I don't know if you had any hints or tips on that one at all.
Yeah, so with that, it's a bit, you need to have a look at all pension statements, or you need to have a look at P60s. If they've changed the name, it is a little bit of legwork and a bit of admin. I'm sure I'm sure that it does. You just need some base knowledge sometimes, and there are other pension trackers, but you might need to pay for them. But they're not going to give you much more information, unfortunately. Um, if you've not kept that data and the company's dissolved, it's going to, like I said, take a lot more tracking down, and there's no one size fits all, and that's what that new dashboard was going to do for you. So unfortunately, it is a bit of hunting and finding and keeping old. This is why it's so important to keep old pay slips, P60s, and to keep a record who you have worked for. Because at the end of the day, if they have changed trading names, you will be able to find who the pension scheme was with, because a lot of the pension schemes do continue on, especially the defined pension schemes, if the defined benefit. I don't know if like there might have been historic, because some pension schemes folded with the employer when they went bust. So, but that's a whole different story, that one.
And lots of people have popped some hints and tips in the chat around that. So
Yeah,
someone else has suggested using Companies House to look for old
that's
company
it.
names.
Yeah, it's a bit of
Um,
legwork of your own that you have
yeah,
to do.
yeah, of course. And then somebody else has suggested if you have one pension scheme with Aviva, then they have a pension finder service for
Yeah.
the other pensions you might have with other companies,
So
and that's free of charge. So yeah, potentially
yeah.
using some of your current pension schemes that you know about to see if they offer that service. So that
And yeah,
sounds like
that's
a
triggers something. So if you're really struggling, you could ring round, even if you've not got a pension with them, just ring round like the big ones, your Scottish Widows, your Avivas, your Aegon, ring round the big ones and just say, do I have a pension with you? And
yeah.
that's all you can do. Unfortunately, it is a bit of a minefield, but hopefully in the future, in the next few years, there's going to be something more simplistic to get us finding our old pensions.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions here. Do you have to pay a charge for having a pension pot?
So there will be charges because they are investments. So you need to log on to your own pension scheme and see what the charges are. There'll be management charges and there might be scheme charges. So just find out about what you're being, because obviously Aviva or Scottish Widows or all the other big ones, they're managing a portfolio on your behalf. So there may be potential charges, management charges, but you should be able to get a rundown of that when you log on.
Lovely, thank you. And then somebody else, I think you've covered it a little bit in some of yours, but it was around how do I transfer pensions into one place?
Yes, so you need to contact your old provider, your new provider. Before you do start transferring pensions, you need to work out how your pension schemes are doing. Because say you had three pension schemes, so you've got your current pension scheme, you've got two older schemes, and one of the older schemes you were there for quite a substantial amount of years. You need to get your facts, so you need to see what fees are involved in transferring that pension, and you need to know how is that pension performing. Because even though you're not contributing towards that, it might be performing quite well. It might be still getting some growth on it, just being sat there alone. So you need to compare what's the growth on the old pension scheme compared with the growth potentially on your current pension scheme. Is it worth bringing it into your current pension scheme? Because if it's doing it or fine by of its own accord and you're getting that growth, then leave it where it is. You know what I mean? So you do need a few facts before you start pulling the trigger on combining pension schemes, and especially if your old pension schemes are defined benefit, those are ones you wouldn't touch because they're a guaranteed income. So you wouldn't start moving those pension schemes. It's the DC ones you would combine. And also, there's nothing wrong with having a couple of pension schemes in retirement because sometimes that gives you a couple of options. So, say you were to retire at 65, you might say, well, actually, I'm going to release one pension scheme, live on that for a few years, and leave my second one invested. So it does give you a couple of options, but if it's all in one pot, then you've not got that flexibility. So just be wary. So for some people, it's the right thing. So for some people, they like having a couple of pension pots, and it just means you get a couple of different incomes in retirement, and it gives you a bit of flexibility. Because you might think, well, I'll retire and I'll just go part time, but I'll pull on a pension scheme to keep my income at a certain level.
A really quick fire one here,
Yeah.
hopefully. Let's just see if we can answer this one in a minute. Overseas pensions, people who've got contributions overseas. This example here is in Australia. Can you find them and transfer them to the UK?
It depends what relationship the UK have with that country.
Country. Right, okay.
Um, so you'd have to do some investigating or get some financial advice. I was speaking to someone who had pensions in Ireland, and they actually spoke to a financial advisor in Ireland to get more information because there wasn't much information our side about transferring pensions. So it might be that you have to speak to someone in Australia to get the version and what their side of things would be. But again, I think there's only a couple of countries that the UK twin with to transfer pensions. I think Canada might be one of them. So you might need to do some research on that.
Okay. The answer to this I know is yes. Are pensions worth the investment these days?
Well, it's the most tax efficient way of saving for your retirement. If you're in a workplace pension, then there's your contributions going in, you've got your salary sacrifice, your national insurance savings, and your workplace will be contributing. So even if you're contributing the minimal level, if your workplace is matching your contributions or even putting in more than what you contribute, then of course it's free money. It's free money going into your pension pot.
Yeah.
If you go and open a personal pension or put money into an ISA, it's just your money going into it. Nobody's matching those contributions. Nobody's putting extra in for you. So a workplace pension is a really good way of saving for the long term and saving for your retirement. Yes.
Okay, cool. So old private pensions, is there somehow you can trace those?
So again, you would have to do you'd have to ring around or try and find old paperwork because
Yeah.
obviously you've not got that anchor point of a workplace and who that would be. So bit of legwork again for you there.
I guess you
Sorry.
can go back perhaps in old bank statements and things
Think
potentially to
so.
look at
Yeah.
that.
If you
Yeah.
is it pretty because you'll have done a standing order or a direct debit to
Okay.
that?
Yeah.
Oh,
How
yeah.
does this connect with a SIP, self-invested personal pension?
So a self-invested personal pension, that's usually what self-employed people usually open. It's just a type of pension scheme. So it's where you choose your own investments and then it's like a personal pension. It's a version of a personal pension. So that sits outside of a workplace pension. It's not a defined contribution one.
Okay. Is there any way you can go back and find get copies of P60s?
Yes, so if you go on to get the HMRC app, download the HMRC app, every year you have work. So it goes back to me being 15, 16. You can go back to your P60s in there. It doesn't necessarily tell you who you work for, but maybe it'll jog some memory, or you can just look on there
Codes you can
and
look up or something
yeah,
potentially.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what you got. But all your P60s are actually on there. But again, it's so important to be organised with paperwork and make sure you've got that log somewhere.
I think this question's been answered in the chat, but when did compulsory workplace pensions come into play? I've been working since 2003 and done a lot of agency work, so I could have had pensions with some of the companies in the UK. I think
So
I
it
did see
wasn't
2012 come up. I think that's been
yeah.
deleted.
So
No,
when
2012.
it
Yeah.
yeah, but before even if you work from there might a lot of places still did give pensions, so it doesn't necessarily go on a date. I wouldn't say you've just got to look back right until 2003.
Yeah. Okay. I think that covers all the questions in the chat,
Everything.
but
Yeah.
please feel free to put your hand up if you've got anything else or anyone's got any comments or questions. Please do complete the feedback on the QR code. That's really, really useful to us. Like I've said, the slides will be available and the recording on our website for 3 months. There's also a link on our website to a podcast that we've done recently, again based on pensions. So I think the more information you can, if you're interested, well, if you're interested or even if you're not interested, the more information and the more input you can take now, I think is really helpful. And as Nadine and I were saying before the call, it seems to be gaining a lot of interest at the moment. So yeah, definitely start looking, start learning, and hopefully this session has been really useful to everybody. So
Great. Yeah. I just hope it's given that everyone a push to just start engaging, really engage with your pensions, try and be, financially resilient and independent of your own accord. So we're not relying on the state or we're not relying on other people's pension funds, that we are resilient of our own accord.
Fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much everyone for joining
Thanks,
us today, and a
everyone.
massive thanks to you, Nadine, for
Oh,
taking us
great
through those
session.
slides.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. See you
Thank
Thank
you.
again.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.
Helen, are you right to stop recording for us? I think we'll just wait for the last few people to leave the
I
call.
can stop it. I've got an option to stop it. Yep.